Welcome to the SpeakHer Podcast with your host, Camille Essick, the podcast where creators and innovators connect. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, this is Camille. Welcome to 2026. I am so excited to have you all here. This is more of a reflective episode as we begin to kick off the 2026 season for the SpeakHer Podcast. First of all, I hope that you all had a really good holiday, a blessed holiday season. And I hope that you all have a blessed. What I would like to do is take some time and drop some gems throughout the month of January before we begin to bring guests on later on in this first part of the season to have some reflective moments with you all that are in the creative and innovative spaces. So before I hop into those things, what I need you to do right now is hit that notification bell and subscribe. Be sure to follow me. I'm across all the platforms such as iHeartRadio, Spotify, Pandora. I'm also on Instagram at camille.essick and also on YouTube. And we also have new music streaming available on Tidal. But enough about that. We'll get into that later. What I want to say to you all is that there is a quiet danger in creativity. It's not ambition. It's not innovation. It's not even success. It's when we take, those good things and that we have, the gifts, the talents, and we put it in God's place. When that opportunity becomes identity, when the algorithms become affirmation, and when relationships become security, and really that portion about the algorithm, that's something that I've had to learn and still learning to overcome, because we want to check those numbers. We want to see how many subscribers we got today, how many followers. We are all guilty of it. But when we do that, and it's good to know your numbers, it's good to know where you are, but when you do that to the point where it begins to take over, it can quietly or loudly suffocate creativity instead of fueling it. So what I want you all to do right now is grab a pen and paper. I'm going to drop some notes to you all, maybe even a scripture too, but I really want you all to get into this and be sure to like, share, and subscribe with someone you feel that needs to hear this. So number one, I want to say that opportunity is not evil. It's not bad. It's not terrible. But when opportunity becomes a source or the source and creativity begins to shrink, now we have a problem, right? So when we have every idea and it's filtered through, hey, will this open a door? How much am I going to get for this? Will this get me the closer? When we stop creating from a place of conviction and start creating from calculation, that can be an issue, right? So in your spare time, I do want you to look at Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5-6. And I also want you to think about is when opportunity becomes your main focus, it becomes in the forefront, and it really begins to take over the why of what you're doing. We can chase access instead of assignment. And then we can delay obedience, in waiting for validation. And when we have abandoned ideas that don't immediately feel strategic, that's something that we need to take inventory of. So I do want to say innovation is rarely born in safe places. It's born in obedience. It's born in alignment way before the door appears. So in that point, we're going to go to point number 2, which is how your algorithm can drive you. So algorithms, as we know, they're tools. That's how we measure where we are, where we stand. We look at our followers, we look at our subscribers, we look at our likes, we look at our downloads. And again, there's nothing wrong with celebrating the milestones. There's nothing wrong with monitoring where you are, looking at growth. But when creativity begins to be measured by your metric and you're basing your worth on those metrics, now it begins to quieten your soul, because you begin to ask, if I post this, how will this perform? Is this searchable? How is my SEO being optimized? And we need to look at Is this honest? Is this aligned? Is this necessary? So point number 2, write down the scripture, Romans chapter 12, verse 2. So the algorithm rewards sameness, but creativity was designed for different. It's to be distinct, it's to be unique. Because when you look across social media, everyone's doing the same trends. Everyone's doing the same type of reel. Everyone's podcasting in the same type of format. It becomes a factory, like a cookie cutter. But if you look across all industries, art, music, science, STEM, every industry, the people that blazed the trail, the people that we remember, they did it differently, right? So when your algorithm begins to drive you and it pushes you and it becomes that thing, as we say, the word forefront in your mind, we can edit ourselves before we create because we're so focused on how it will be received versus creating out of a place of authenticity or just in the moment. We begin to mimic instead of innovate. And then we begin to silence messages that don't trend because we feel like, oh, well, this is on trend, so maybe I shouldn't post this because I don't know if this will go viral or has the potential to go viral. And that's not what God is asking us to do. He's not asking your content to be viral. He needs it to be faithful. So we're going to go to point number 3. And we're going to look at how relationships can be something that we lift up higher than our creativity or even God. And that's being integrated from the relationship section that we just discussed. So this one is a little heavy, and relationships are divine. They do have divinity involved, and before relationships can become purposeful in the wrong placement, they can define us. And that looks like, when our creativity begins to bend to itself, because again, circling back, to be accepted, to be chosen, to be kept. So write down the scripture, Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 5. And in your time, just take a look at that, okay? So when we are pursuing relationships or opportunity, we can shrink ideas to avoid discomfort. We can stay silent to preserve access, meaning, let's say you see something that is not right or is unjust or inequitable. But because we don't want to lose our place or our proximity, we're quiet. And what's that saying? Silence is complacency or complicit, right? You're complicit when you're silent. And then point 3, we can also delay our growth to avoid abandonment, meaning, I want to be a part of this group, but if I speak up, I may not be included in certain events or invited to certain places. So creativity begins to perform instead of speak. So now you're operating out of a place of performance versus assignment, purpose, and intention. And with this, when this happens, eventually, as a creative, you become exhausted, not from work, but from self-betrayal. I'll say that again. Eventually, the creative, you become exhausted, not from work, but from self-betrayal. So write down Matthew chapter 10, verse 37. And that scripture isn't about rejection, it's about order. So when our relationships are out of order, innovation can stall, your vision can blur, and your voice can weaken. Why? Because creativity requires truth, not approval. So what happens to our creativity? It's not that your creativity is destroyed, it's narrowed. Meaning you can turn exploration into fear, it can turn expression into performance, and it can call what you're called to or what you're purposed to do into currency. And there's a warning that comes with that. Look at Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. When we serve opportunity, we lose originality. When we serve algorithms, we lose authenticity. When we serve relationships, we lose authority. And what you need to know is that creativity thrives in freedom, not fear. Releasing and restoring in the flow. But here is good news, and this is what I want to get to. So God does not shame us for misplacing our trust. He restores us when we realign. So you can write down Matthew chapter 6, verse 33. So when God is first, opportunity finds you. When God is first, algorithms serve you. When God is first, relationships support you. not the other way around. True innovation flows from obedience over optimization, conviction over consensus, and alignment over applause. So, in this closing reflection, ask yourself quietly, what have I been centering that has never been meant to carry me? I'll say that again if you're writing this down. And you can write this in your journal or do this in your reflection, prayer, devotion time, and ask yourself this aloud. What have I been centering that was never meant to carry me? What have I been listening to louder than God? What idea have I been sitting on because I was afraid of losing something or someone? Creativity is the safest when God is not competing for space. This isn't about deleting platforms. It's about dethroning thoughts that do not align with God and your purpose and your plans for his life. Because when God is centered, your creativity is free once again. And freedom is where innovation lives. So let's take a moment and let's dig a little deeper. So when we're looking at, as a creative, what is identity substitution? This happens when you are asking, who am I? And it's answered by, who is with me? The root here is believing that you're more complete, valuable, or legitimate once chosen by another person. This could be in business, it could be relational, it could be familial, in spaces of creativity and innovation, platforms, podcasting, real estate, whatever your field is your worth based on who chooses you? And this can sound like, oh, I'll finally be settled when, and you fill in the blank. Or my life will have more meaning when, and you fill in the blank. Or I'm behind because, and then you fill in the blank. And then Colossians 2 and chapter 2, verse 10 says, you are complete in him. So when identity flows from relationship status instead of sonship, the relationship becomes an altar. Point 2, you may ask, like, well, if I get this sponsor, if I have this backing, if I get this investor, but should we not be saying God is my provider? Think about it. If your connections, your followers, and your circles, and they're lifted up higher, they can be treated as emotional safety nets, financial security plans, or even protection from loneliness, fear, and instability. That ideal can feel safer than trusting God's timing or provision, and that attachment becomes dependence. So in your reflection time, go back and review Psalm chapter 20, verse 7. Wound compensation. Unhealed wounds seek healing through proximity, meaning who you know. We hear about people name dropping. Oh, I know so-and-so. I was in this space. I know this person. That's my cousin. Black people, we're really good about throwing out somebody's a cousin real quick, right? This root often grows from abandonment, emotional neglect, and consistent love, which you can experience through past relationships or parents, church, or community rejection. And your heart will say, well, if I'm in this circle or if I'm associated with these people, then I feel okay. A relationship cannot heal unless God touches it. So look at Psalm 147, verse 3. Then this was a big one. This has even stepped on my toes. Timeline anxiety or a fear of delay. This can grow, and it happens when we are waiting. We're waiting and it feels like failure. This shows up as comparison, pressure from culture or church, even anxiety about age or missing out or fear of running out of time. So look at Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31. Put a pin in that, make a note. When God's process feels threatening instead of purposeful, we rush with substitutes, meaning, okay, God, you're taking too long, so let me help him out and let me do this over here. And since he didn't come through, let me do this. Let me have a plan B, C, D, E, F, and G, and then let me know how that worked out. Connection becomes proof of success. And this is where we get into image and validation. So point 5, we're going to look at image and validation. And this is when your connection, your community, who you know, where you socialize, it becomes air quote proof of your success. The root of this is needing external confirmation that your life is right, that you've made it, you've arrived. And this can look like social media optics, cultural milestones. It can look like respectability or being respected within certain organizations. So make a note, and when you have time, look at 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7. And these connections are never meant to be worn as like a badge of honor, right? There's nothing wrong with community, but the danger is you're needing it or desiring it or wanting it in order to be or feel okay. So let's flip the coin on this, right? So redemption and reordering and not rejection. So when God doesn't ask you to reject his desire, he's just asking you to reorder your devotion. That looks like healthy posture, meaning you can desire community. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be a part of an organization, but to do so, but not out of a place of desperation, not without losing yourself, and not without losing that place with God because you desire valued partnership. And so when you have a time, go look at Matthew chapter 6, verse 33. So just in like a healthy heart check that's reflective and not condemning, because, we're not here for that. We're just here to give some reflective points. You may be feeling certain things if your peace feels impossible without community or relationship, or you're having to wait and it feels like punishment, or you compromise your convictions, straying from your moral compass to avoid being alone, and God feels distant unless the desire is met. So here's a truth to anchor you. So here are some truths to anchor you. God is not withholding love. He's protecting order. What comes after him will not break you. And I may continue with this reflection series throughout the episodes throughout the year. Let me know if you want more of this. But there's a quiet conversation that we don't always have, especially in creative spaces. And it's not about relationships. It's about identity. So this episode is for the ones who are building, creating, leading, and still wondering why certain relationships carry more weight than they should. Not in a drastic way, not in a condemning way, but just being honest. Because sometimes what we call love or connectivity or community is actually fear of being alone. It's fear of starting over. It's fear of not being chosen. And what I want you all to explore is how that quietly shapes your decisions, your creativity, and your obedience. And just in a final thought, look at Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 5. And I want you to know that when we begin to covet certain opportunities, relationships, and it's not aligned with our purpose, it's not God-centered, it can show up as delaying assignments, waiting for emotional alignment, shrinking your voice to preserve intimacy. You can lose momentum after breakups. You're confusing chemistry with confirmation, and then letting emotional highs determine creative output. What does that really mean, Cam? It doesn't mean that relationships, connectivity, opportunity, relationships, organizations are bad. It just means that people were never meant to be power sources. When someone becomes your emotional supply, when an organization becomes your emotional supply, when a community becomes your emotional supply, when a social media platform becomes your emotional supply, your creativity begins to negotiate instead of flowing, and your calling begins to wait for permission it never needed. So I hope you all got something from this reflective point in the month of January. These are just some things I wanted you all to think about as we venture into the 2026 season of the SpeakHer Podcast. Not coming in heavy, not coming in deep, but I definitely wanted to land in a place and let you all know that I'm working behind the scenes to bring you more impactful, reflective, and insightful conversation. Because here at the SpeakHer Podcast, this is the podcast where innovators and creators connect. And here we also discuss topics and issues impacting the culture. And this is one of those things. So I will be releasing the lineup for the month of February very soon. Some things are being finalized behind the scenes, and those things will be released to my subscribers first as far as the lineup for the month of February before I release them to everyone else on social media. That is one of the perks of subscribing. Subscriptions are free, and when you subscribe, you also have access to a free download from me. It's 5 things that are stopping you from launching. That's available as soon as you subscribe. That download is available to you. So I hope that you all have a safe week. Be blessed until the next time. Good night.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the SpeakHer Podcast. Be sure to follow Camille on Instagram at camille.essick, Facebook at the SpeakHer Podcast, or www.camilleessick.com.